Okay, so I just did something which I don't normally do during the course of my week, and that is watch Family Guy. Now, when I was in middle school, particularly, Family Guy was the funniest show on television. I mean, actually, it wasn't even on television, because back then, it was the DVD release. The Family Guy first DVD release, I remember, was like one of the very first shows to come out in box set. And Family Guy back in the late 90s, I don't think really got the good, showing that it needed. Because most people just thought of it as a Simpsons ripoff, or I think Fox screwed them over and moved them to some other night. But once the DVDs came out, everybody could watch Family Guy, and we remembered just how hilariously funny this great, great show that used to be out there. And there were episodes that I had never seen. I didn't know the show lasted more than a season. Because, well, I was 9 or 8 or whatever the hell when that show was airing. So the DVDs were there, and I could watch them. And I watched them with my family. I watched them with my friends. I have fucking thousands of these jokes memorized in my head. The first 3 seasons of Family Guy are fantastic. They are some of the best animated sitcom stuff that's ever been made, probably. I mean, it's not exactly the most dramatically amazing thing, but it was just so silly, and it was just so much fun. It was like this zeitgeist of being trapped inside a television, of just endlessly referencing things. It had its own madness to it. It was great. So Family Guy, once upon a time, used to be a great show. Right? Used to be. Today, I'd say it's probably the worst show on television. And that's a huge exaggeration, because I don't watch every single show on television. There's some shit I will not even touch. I think on CBS or something, there's a show about two fat people, and there's a show about two annoying bitches being annoying bitches. There's all kinds of crap. There's all kinds of MTV bullshit. But Family Guy is probably the worst show that used to be good. Alright? It has gone the most downhill. It has gone downhill to unbelievable levels. I remember 7 years ago, back on the Final Fantasy Wiki, when I was still there, on my old kind of unofficial blog, I went and I wrote down a post, because in that season, there were so many bad episodes. There were episodes that were just unbelievably offensive. They were just so bad that I just couldn't watch the show anymore. And it made me really sad, because it was like, this was really great. And in 7th grade or whatever, whenever it came back, it was really exciting. It's like, oh my god, new Family Guy! And it was good, at least in season 4, it was good enough. But it's just been going downhill, like, season by season. It's just been unbelievable. I can't remember a show that's done as terrible a plotlines as this show has done. Like, there was an episode where Peter Griffin befriended O.J. Simpson and said, hey, everybody, O.J. Simpson wasn't that bad of a guy, even though he's a murderer. And this episode came out like 10 years after the O.J. Simpson trial. It was like, as not topical as imaginable. Like, somebody dragged up a script from God knows how long. And the whole thing was like, oh, come on, guys, O.J. Simpson's misunderstood, which is like a horrible position to take. And then at the end of the episode, O.J. Simpson randomly kills 2 people. So it's like the whole thing was just for O.J. Simpson gags. And there was another episode where Peter Griffin turns gay. And because gay people, of course, just can't have families and have insane anonymous sex. This was done because of some, like, magical serum or whatever. You know, gay people can't have real relationships. They have to have anonymous sex constantly. They can't have family. They can't have children, whatever the fuck. He goes and he leaves. He abandons them without a thought. And he goes to go shack up with some gay guy and have lots of orgies. It was just horrible. Just, like, really, really horrible stuff. Like, ugh, it's so bad. Like, just so bad. And this season, what a lot of people have gotten riled up with, and actually what finally got me watching the show regularly again, because I've seen the last 2 episodes. I just watched it airing. This is the first time I've watched it airing since 2008? 2007? I don't know. It's 2013, almost 2014. It's been a long, long time since I've watched this show primetime. I don't even watch The Simpsons anymore, because that show is just... I mean, I love The Simpsons more than Family Guy, and that show's really, really tired, but Family Guy tonight, it felt so bad. It felt so tired. It felt like a show that should have ended a long time ago. Like, they really are out of energy. They really are out of jokes. And what's really gotten everyone really riled up about Family Guy lately is because Brian Griffin died last week. He got run over by a car, he's dead. So, Brian Griffin is definitely one of the top 3 favorite characters, I think, of everybody. Really, Family Guy is so badly written that, of the core cast, people only really care about 3 or 4 of them, and the rest of them, nobody really cares about. They try to have the Simpsons side characters of, like, Quagmire and Joe and whatever, but they're all just, like, one joke. They've never had good stories written about them. It's just been really lazy. And even within the family unit itself, Chris and Meg are completely wasted. Nobody ever uses them for anything. So really all you have is Brian, Peter, Lois, and Stewie. And Lois is halfway there. Brian and Stewie are probably the most beloved characters left over, because Stewie was the breakout character. And what's been like the last thing that Family Guy's managed to hold on to, because they've lost everything. They've become so mean-spirited. They've become so hateful. Their jokes are so lazy. It's just the stupidest stuff. Like, I don't think what they do is actually racist or actually hateful, but they make, like, these insanely racist jokes because it's the first thing that comes into their mind. It's like they can't think any harder. They have no ability to create even the slightest bit of more sophisticated humor, because they don't really have characters. They just kind of have these creatures that spat out jokes. So really, the last 2 characters that even mattered anymore, that even had any sort of relationship, that was anything less than just horrible and hateful and disgusting and just awful. It was the last thing that the show had was Stewie and Brian. Because they had a legitimate bond. They were really friends. They started out like antagonists to each other. And there was always that antagonism left, but it was always with like an element of love. Like Stewie was kind of in love with Brian. Brian, they had so much. There was so much richness to those 2 characters. It was like you could have cut out every other character in the show and just had Stewie and Brian left there. That's it. And it's like the only episodes I've even bothered to watch of the last few seasons are the ones of Stewie and Brian, like the ones I actually hear, oh my god, Family Guy was actually legitimately good. Like, if there's a Stewie Brian episode, I'll actually bother to go and hunt it down and watch it. But otherwise, fuck this show. Fuck the writers. The writers have no idea what they're doing. Or they do know what they're doing. They just don't care. Nobody cares anymore. And that's what this episode felt like. But to go back, what everyone's really pissed off about with Family Guy lately, and it's the fact that Brian died. And everybody's like, oh my god, I can't believe they killed Brian. I can't believe it either. Because these writers particularly, they don't give a fuck. Alright? This Brian thing should have been obvious to everybody from the very first second that this was a gimmick. And I actually thought he'd be back this week. But apparently he's going to be back about 6 weeks from now, is what I've heard. If you actually believe that they're going to kill off Brian Griffin, you're basically a mark for this show, alright? You're the one that's falling for this strange kind of Andy Kaufman anti-humor that they think they're doing. The joke's on us. Like, this is one of the things about Family Guy lately. It's not a show that makes jokes anymore. Like, it does. But, like, I think about half of this show is running on some sort of level of irony that the writers are probably laughing their asses off because they are amazed, as much as anybody else, that they're still going. They're like, holy fuck, I can't believe this show is going. This has to be a joke. This whole show, in of itself, now has to be a joke. It's not out to entertain people anymore. Or maybe there are a few naive cast members who still think they're entertaining people. And maybe there are a few really, really stupid or little kids or whatever who really just like, oh, it's so edgy. Look, they made a condom joke. Ah ha ha. Like, it's them, alright? Anybody with any kind of semblance of a brain who actually likes characters, who actually likes humor, like, they're just gonna look at this show and just be like, oh, it's terrible. So this Brian Griffin thing, it's a stunt. Clearly a stunt. It's like professional wrestling. Like, this is what it feels like. It feels like, I don't even watch professional wrestling, but I know wrestling does this, where they're gonna go threaten that The Rock or Triple H or, I don't know anything about wrestling. They always make this threat that their main headers are going to leave. They're gonna be gone forever, or that Hulk Hogan has turned into an evil guy. Does Hulk Hogan still wrestle? I really hope Hulk Hogan doesn't still wrestle, because if he does, that's really fucking bad, because that guy is 1,000,000 years old. But anyway, this whole Brian Griffin thing, it's a stunt. It's like, what can we get away with? What can we do to actually shock the audience anymore? And, alright, kill off a character. But they're not really going to kill off Brian Griffin. Like, they definitely aren't. Because if they were ever going to do anything that would really revamp this show's energy, they would have done it years and years ago when it became really obvious that they just were out. They were beaten, they should have retired. They should have just left on top. It should have been like 3 years after the show was revived, when this show was starting to get really mean-spirited and kept doing a lot of gags that were just about repetition. It's like, hey, look, Peter Griffin shinned his knee. How long can we make him keep making a noise? Or let's cut back to fucking Conway Twitty, this weird southern singer, this country western singer with bad hair from the 70s. Let's see how long we can keep putting him into the show for no reason until people get mad at us. It's that kind of humor. It's bad. It's really bad. The joke, again, the joke is not what's being presented, the joke's on you. And you should not watch the show. Do not watch the show. So anyway, my point isn't that Brian Griffin's dead. That's not what offends me. I mean, it does offend me thinking about it, because, again, the Stewie Brian thing is the only thing that's left. It's the only thing you'd ever want to watch on this show. Like, you don't want to watch Peter Griffin, what Peter Griffin has become. Like, before, he was just, like, in season 1, he was a well-meaning but lazy father. He just really wanted to watch TV. And he didn't really understand the real world. He'd been watching TV so much that he kind of went a little crazy and just assumed that his life was a sitcom and it would work that way, but it never did. Now he is a full-on retard. They actually made him retarded, and a sociopath, a crazy, very ugly monster of a character who, you don't really want to put any real thought into what these characters are doing to each other. Like, once they start becoming real people, the show starts becoming really disturbing and really creepy. Which is a thing that other animated sitcoms are able to do. Like The Simpsons. Bart Simpson, Homer Simpson, all of them. They're all real people. They all have real moments. They connect. They feel like a real family. Homer Griffin not Homer. Oh my god, Homer Griffin. Mixing up my animated characters. But Homer Simpson, he kind of goes on the edge. He's a bad alcoholic. He's lazy. He's got all these faults. But, he really loves his kids. And there's all these heartwarming moments all throughout the season where you can tell this is a family that's dysfunctional, but works. It's basically like the family I've grown up in. It's probably one of the truest depictions of a real American family, except slightly skewed. Family Guy has gone beyond the point of it being a family. Now they are really, really disgusting, horrible things. So Peter Griffin in this episode, for example, he leaves his entire family to go and become a 70s folk singer with Quagmire. Because at some point, Seth MacFarlane and whoever voices Quagmire, I'm not sure who that is, he discovered, we can do a really good harmony, so let's make an episode where we just sing together. And that's the episode. There's nothing more to it. It's just them singing about mundane shit. But in this episode, Peter Griffin just abandons his entire family without really much thought. And to be fair, even the Griffins don't really seem to care that much. It's like, he's gone. They just get some new guy as a runaway joke. So it's like, you put any thought into this, like, oh my god, he left his entire family to go be a singer. What the fuck? What's wrong with this guy? Like, you start thinking about it, and it starts becoming monstrous. Like, you can't think. Do not think while watching Family Guy. Thinking is bad. It's banned. It's banned. You are not to think. If you think, you can't watch. I think. I think constantly. It's a big problem of mine. Even when I was a little kid, I couldn't stop thinking. I had trouble sleeping, because I would just think. I would think harder than ever when I was trying to sleep. It still bugs me, to this day. So I can't watch Family Guy, because I start thinking about it. I'm like, start really putting some thought into it, and I start to notice that at no point during this episode, it's never been funny. There are a lot of gags, there are cutaway gags, there's all kinds of wacky stuff going on. Peter Griffin had cow udders at one point and squirted it on business professionals. But it's not funny. None of it's funny. There's racist Jew jokes, and I guess there's a lot of Jewish writers on that show, so apparently it's not racist. There's all kinds of jokes about people getting their asses kicked, like violently getting their asses kicked. At one point, Peter Griffin sings a song about wanting to kill his entire family with a knife. And it's not funny. It's really not funny. There's nothing funny going on. I watch the show, and my face has no expression. That was the noise I was making while watching the show. And once upon a time, I'd watch a Family Guy show, and I'd be laughing. I'd be laughing constantly. You ever go see something that's so funny, like you go see a stand-up comedian, go see George Carlin or whatever, and you've been laughing for an hour, and you realize you've had a smile on your face for so long, and like when the show ends, or like it slows down for a little bit, your muscles finally loosen up, and you go back to a regular expression, and you feel sore. You've been laughing so hard. You've had that good of a time. But with Family Guy now, I watch these jokes, and nothing's hitting, nothing's working. There were 2 jokes tonight that actually managed to make me laugh. One was where they were making fun of the state of Delaware, because Delaware is just a funny state. Because nothing happens there, nobody lives there. I don't know what the point of Delaware is. So, any Delaware listeners to you guys, move to New Jersey. Delaware's pointless. And then there was another joke where it was an album cover, and Peter Griffin and Quagmire were wearing the same hat. It was a big, long hat. I thought that was funny because they were wearing a long hat. It looked silly. And that was it. In a half hour minus commercials, like 22 minutes of television, nothing was funny. And I've actually watched the episode before Brian Griffin got killed, where they went to Italy. And again, there was nothing funny happening. It didn't even feel like a sitcom anymore. It didn't feel like anything. It just felt like these characters were just sort of going through the motions. And it's like the characters would kind of take turns, because they don't really write plot lines anymore. They just kind of have characters step up and they're going to say something funny. It's like, oh, now's the point where Stewie says something funny. Now's the point where Chris says something funny. Now's the point where we all make fun of Meg. Oh god, I don't even want to get in on a tangent about how they treat the character of Meg, but it is so horrible. It is so bad what they do to this character. Like, at one point Meg was just kind of boring, and now she is, I really don't even want to get into it. It's just so bad. It's so creepy. And I feel bad for this character. Like, it's gone beyond the point where I'm laughing anymore. It's like, at one point it was so dark that you just kind of laughed at them hitting at Meg. And now it's like, you realize that this is a girl who must have survived 10 years or more of abuse and neglect and honest hate from the people who are supposed to be your support network. And you're like, oh my god, what am I watching? What are these things? It's not even at the point of, like, the Aqua Teen Hunger Force. It's a show about nothing. It's a show about just wacky shit going on. Because nothing really happens in that show. It's just so insane that it becomes funny. Like, there really aren't characters. But even then, I gotta say, the characters in Aqua Teen Hunger Force might even be better written. And that's just a show about 11 minutes of bullshit happening. I can't even believe it anymore. So one of the things that's happened on this show, in, like, the meta, weird, internal universe where we think they've actually replaced Brian the dog with the character of Vinny, played by Tony Sirico, who we all know as Paulie Walnuts, from a much, much better show, The Sopranos. It's actually my favorite show of all time, The Sopranos. So, Tony Sirico's character is a dog. He's Vinny. As far as I could tell, all he is an Italian stereotype. So now they get to make Italian stereotype jokes. So they've had a crippled character, so they can make crippled jokes. They have a Jewish character, so they can make Jew jokes. Black people walk in, so they can make black people jokes. Peter Griffin's retarded, so they can make retarded jokes. It's all these things that they could just go and make, like, the easiest and most dumb jokes. And you'd think at this point they might be trying to settle the character in to the family. Because last episode, the deal was, it was Vinny and Stewie. Stewie kind of accepting the fact they have a new dog and he has a new friend. And surprisingly, it was one of the better moments that the show's done, where Vinny actually decides, I'm gonna go watch over this kid, because he needs me now. And I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe they're doing this. I can't believe they're having a character care about somebody else. And you could almost believe for a second that maybe Vinny could possibly work. There might be more to him than this. But in this episode, they do nothing to build him up. And I had assumed that Vinny would just be gone. There'd be no explanation, or right after the title sequence, he'd get run over, Brian would walk in, and they'd point and laugh at us. That's what I assumed. I'm guessing that joke's coming later. But as for this episode, Vinny is nowhere to be seen. Like, this is an episode probably... this show gets aired out of order, I think, because that's the way animation works. It kind of... You make a show, and because there's no real continuity, you can just air them in any order you want. Lots of shows do this. So it may just be the fact that they originally intended this episode would air 4 episodes down, and they would do a few episodes where Vinny would connect with other characters, but they don't do that. Vinny has about 2 lines in this episode, one of which being a horribly homophobic statement where he proudly mentions how everybody in his old neighborhood beat the shit out of a guy who just liked to do girl things. It's horrible in of itself. And that's about it. There's really, the whole episode's about Peter. And he doesn't really interact with anybody either. He goes off with Quagmire to be a country western, I'm sorry, I say country western again. He's supposed to be a folk singer. And they don't really interact. They just kind of run from joke to joke until finally they reach the point where they're like, we gotta reset the status quo, so Peter Griffin's gonna act like a dick to Quagmire for about 3 minutes. They'll break up. He goes home. They hug. That's it. You know, you gotta bring back everything. Even though, at this point, you know what? I think the family would be better served if Peter Griffin didn't come back. In fact, I think everybody would be better served if they stopped living with each other. Like, they just stopped. They stopped being together. They stopped being a family. They all go their separate ways. Because they are so horrible and monstrous. And really what this episode was it was just slow. It was just sad and exhausted. It just sort of carried itself. Like, it had no energy. It had no plot, really. And that's the craziest thing. It's like Family Guy always was a show that was always so manic. It was manic to the detriment of plot. It was like, alright, well, we have too many jokes. We have a joke every single second. We're just going to throw it in. We don't even know where to fit this stuff in, so we'll just have a cutaway for no reason. It'll just be, we'll be walking around, and Peter Griffin, he's a clown in Vietnam, and now we got a crazy plastic surgeon, and all this stuff. Stewie's fat. We got all these jokes. We got everything. We have all these ideas. There was so much energy. There was so much life. There was so much vibrancy, and it's all gone. I can't believe how bad it's gotten. Like, this may be its worst season yet. Regardless of the Brian issue. Brian could be here. Brian could be gone. This would be a terrible episode of television, no matter where you are. And I guess if you still like Family Guy, if you just love this show, power to you. I mean, really, just power to you. But, I can't even believe people watch this anymore. It must just be out of nostalgia. Like, you remember it being funny seasons ago, and you're still watching it. But it's like now, like, I can't believe this show's still going. Like, you have to just give up at some point. You have to just realize you don't have it in you anymore. Like, shows have their limits. They have a point where they just run out. It happens. That's why shows end. Imagine if Seinfeld had lasted until today. Like, that's what we're dealing with right now. It happens. I mean, it's a terrible thing to not have a show anymore, but it's joke humor. Like, alright, people work together, they make jokes, and eventually they run out of steam, and it's like, alright, that's the time we gotta wrap it up. You know, we had a kind of mediocre season, let's let it end. Speaking of which, like, shows kind of like that are getting really, they're starting to see their old age. Like, Futurama's last season wasn't all that hot. It was okay. Like, alright, it ended, and I mean, it's really it's unfortunate that the show ended, because Futurama was, now looking back, always a better show than Family Guy. Way funnier, way more clever, way more charming, way better characters, everything. It had so much more going on than Family Guy ever did. And now it's over, and it's like, okay, it's over, right? I still have the old episodes of Futurama. I'm fine with that. Family Guy should be over. It should end. It should just stop. Because at this point, it's only feeding its own negativity. It's only just making more people unhappy than happy, I think. I know I feel unhappy. Like, I'm probably gonna watch next week's episode, because I'm waiting for the point that they could finally just do the, we got you! We got you! Aren't we smart? We got you! You know, they could finally do the thing. They can finally prove that they're superior to us all. And alright, so then they're gonna be there, and everyone who's actually believed this Brian Griffin is dead thing, they're going to be pissed. They'll be like, you were just fucking with us, weren't you? And everybody want Brian Griffin back? They're gonna get Brian Griffin back, but I don't think they're really going to realize at this point that they've just been fucked with. It's like, they want the old Family Guy that there used to be, but it's never coming back. It's gone. It's over. If you fired every single writer, and maybe got a whole new group, maybe we could have good episodes of Family Guy again. But it's just felt like a show that's gone on seasons and seasons well beyond its course. Brian Griffin, fuck him if he comes back. It's fine, whatever. He could be dead forever. Maybe they could actually work in this new Vinny character. Maybe they could even play it straight. And be like, alright, the show feels tired, we need new blood, let's go and bring in a new character, see if we can shake up the formula. Even on that level, even if they actually were serious, even if they were actually playing it completely straight, and this wasn't all some bullshit angle, this wasn't all some bullshit con, this episode shows they have no interest in doing anything. So, if you really love Family Guy, and really feel bad about the Brian thing, and just watch the episode I did, I hope I entertained you more, because I've actually gone longer than the show did on this stupid little rant of mine. So, here's my message to the people, in case you haven't heard it, because I said it at least 500 times. The people who write Family Guy, this is the message. End! Stop! Stop making the show. Go do other things. Go learn how to fly a kite. Go outside and ride a bike. Go have fun. Go play Assassin's Creed 4. That's a great game. And as for me, that's it. Good night, everybody.